Hi, Dawn Lewis here. It is day 6 of our One Sketch, One Set 7 Ways in 7 Days series. Here is the sketch that I have been using all of this week, as well as Pawsome by Waffleflower, and you can find Waffleflower in Australia at dawnlewis.com.au. Today I am making a 6x6 card. It's for a very special occasion. I'd love to know what you think the occasion is. I'm taking 3 shades of purple cardstock and I'm cutting out 4 squares. 2 are the same and 2 are very different. They are 7 by 7 centimeters because I have measured them just right to leave a nice little border when I place them together, faux quilting style, if you will, on the front of my card. So the first things first, I want to make sure they fit and they line up well. And now it's time to distress this baby. This is Vintage Photo. My favorite distress ink of all time. It's the first one I ever bought. I have had this ink for 14 years and I still haven't re-inked it. I love this distress photo ink. It just seems to go on everything and make it look a little bit old. I've gone all the way around the card base and now I'm going to go all the way around each of my 4 squares. So I was tossing up thinking, would I do 4 completely different shades of purple, but I just couldn't find 4 that worked together. And when I placed these 3 together, it was my favorite combination. So I figured, why not just offset 2 of the same shade and then put 1 each of the other squares to complement them. And I think it's worked really well. So the next thing we're going to do is pop some adhesive on, which I know is just painful to watch, so I've magically skipped to the end, and we're going to make sure that everything still lines up. I wanted to make sure the inking was nice and even, which it was, and we're going to stick down just 1 square at a time. So I'm holding them in place. I'm only pulling out 1 very gently. I'm going to peel off that backing paper and then pop the others on, and I think it's worked well. We're also going to make sure our card is right way up. I'm using embossing ink. So it's a clear embossing ink from Distress Ink. That's the one I happen to have. And I'm stamping this little bone stamp from the Pawsome set all over the front. Now, I did, in hindsight, realize I needed my anti-static powder tool. And so better late than never, I got it on for 3 of them. And it did make a good difference on where the ink was sticking. So I'm using also a post-it note to mask off my craft cardstock. The next stamp I'm popping all over is the gorgeous double heart stamp. You do want to be sure which side your card is up, so which way it's facing, because these hearts are directional. I am heat setting all of this embossing powder using a cute little chopping board I got at IKEA, and they've come up nice and glossy for a tone-on-tone background. I'm trimming down a scrap piece of white cardstock and I'm going to use this to stamp my greeting. I'm also going to use that same white cardstock for my hero, but we'll get to that shortly. So the next thing I've done is I've put out the phrase "You are Pawsome together." There's a little hint for the occasion, and I've stamped up "You are" and "together" using archival jet black ink. So I've popped down the first one, double stamped it with the "You are." I'm peeling that off. Now I'm going to ink up "together" because there's just a couple of little spots. It wasn't as strong as I'd like. Clean that off and I'm left with Pawsome. I'm going to stamp that with a Stampin' Up ink called Elegant Eggplant. I love this dark shade of purple, and I'm stamping the colour in the middle, much like we did in the card yesterday, which had a navy blue Pawsome on the greeting or the sentiment. So I'm going to trim that down. I'm loving my Tonic guillotine trimmer. I've been without a guillotine for a long time, and this one is fantastic. Very straight cuts, very clean cuts. I'm very happy. I'm very lightly going all around the edge with some Vintage Photo. I didn't even re-ink the sponge. I've just gone with what I have just to keep it in keeping with the rest of the card. Now, I didn't have a piece of cardstock big enough for a single mat, and I thought I wanted something a little bit more complicated. So I've taken the leftovers of all of those shades of purple and I'm trimming them down. This one had some light damage, so it was faded on one edge, so I've trimmed it down, and I'm even taking tiny slivers of that very dark purple I used for the mat that you can see here. I'm going around the mat with some Vintage Photo. It's very subtle, the finish on this, but it's there. And then I'm just going to take all of my slivers and randomly place them. Okay, I took care in my randomness, but you know what I mean. They all have double-sided tape on the back. I'm sparing you that tape application. It's boring as all get out to watch. And I'm just going to stack them up randomly, kind of staggered all over the place, and pop them all down. And I'm quite happy with this. it's a little bit abstract, so it came out really, really well. I'm adding some vintage photo because I realised I hadn't inked them up before I stuck them down. So I just popped a little bit on and it worked out well. And I've put foam tape on the back of my greeting, so it's got a bit of dimension going on there. Rather than using tape, I thought, nah, can't be bothered. Using glue, I'm going to stick that great big circle on here. I've used the 3.5-inch circle. And this is watercolour paper. It has a rough and a smooth side. I'm going to use the smooth side today. This watercolour paper came from a dollar shop many, many years ago, and it still serves me really, really well. I'm taking the 2 little dash hounds, I'm popping them nose to nose and adding the little heart. I'm going to ink them up in clear embossing ink. I'm double stamping them because I know this watercolour paper is pretty thirsty. I'm adding white embossing powder and I'm just clearing away any little sticky bits, and we're going to heat set that on my cute little chopping board so that I have white on white, because yes, you guessed it, I'm going to use some more distress ink. I am using Dusty Concord, Wilted Violet and Shaded Lilac. I've also got a mini mister with some Perfect Pearls powder in it to make my own shimmer water, and I'm picking up the colours, and then I realised, you know what, I need more ink. I definitely needed more ink. So I've placed all 3 of those colours down again, sort of surrounding each other, so they'll mix up a bit when I place the tag in it. This is such a fun technique, and because I use the Perfect Pearls in the water, there is a really gorgeous subtle shimmer to it. I've allowed that to dry and now I'm sticking it down, and that is it, people. My beautiful card for a special occasion is done, and we're almost at the end of our series. I hope you're enjoying this series. Tomorrow, tune in where I take the sketch and I've got something quite different to do with it. Thank you so much for watching and subscribing. You can find a link below to all of the details and a materials list on my blog. I do hope that you have a very crafty day, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye for now.